I'm Doug, your tech support representative for Atlantic British, and in this video we're going to touch base on the transmission service and filter kit in our Repair and Maintenance Academy program. And on that program you can go on our website and you can download this sheet, which will also give you all the other recommended services. But in this case we're looking at the transmission filter service kit, part number TRANS M100SKA. This is a service that we recommend every 90,000 miles. Now, if you tow or if you live in an area where a lot of hills, a lot of climbing, then I would suggest you do this on a more often basis. But for normal driving conditions, every 90,000 is the recommended. And what you're going to get with the kit is a new pan assembly with the gasket, because on these ZF transmissions, the pan is integral with the filter. So to change the filter, you need to change the whole pan. Comes with a new gasket. Comes with new magnets to maintain and hold any material that might be floating around in there. You have a new fill plug, which we will show you further on how to do the service on this and where your fill plug is located. And 6 quarts of recommended fluid for the ZF. Do not mix Dextron or any other transmission fluid with these transmissions. They require a specific transmission fluid. You really need to use that so you don't give yourself problems down the line. So you're going to be using anywhere from 5 to 6 quarts, so we give you 6 quarts for your refill. And in a minute what we'll do is show you the basics on how to do your transmission service. Alright, so now we've shown you the kit. We're going to show you how to install and change over the filter and do a service on your ZF transmission on your LR3 or Sport. Both applications fit this particular setup. Now initially, and first thing off the bat, you're going to see this heat shield under the pan of the transmission. The 4 small bolts. We've already taken those bolts out. We're going to move the heat shield over. That'll expose the area that we're going to need to get into. Now, this lower bracket that supports the heat shield has to be removed, and there's going to be 2 small bolts on one side, 2 on the other. You take those bolts out with an open end or box wrench, and then you can drop this out of the way. That'll leave the pan. Now, to remove the pan on these, unfortunately, what you've got to do is remove both the catalytic converter, which there will be 2 bolts all the way up the end of the converter, and then you have your connector right here for your O2 sensor, which is accessible, and you can reach up and disconnect that at that point and leave the O2 right on the cat. Alright, and then you have your downstream O2 sensor, which, if you follow the wire, is going to go behind this cross member and right there next to the transmission. Once you've disconnected those two, you have 2 bolts on your flange. Probably going to need to replace the gasket that sits between the cat and the muffler. These bolts most likely will be in pretty rusted condition. You may want to just break those off and take the remaining stud, either drill them out, or you might have enough stud there where you can heat them up, take them out with a vice grip. You got to take the converter out, and then you'll also need to remove these 2 bolts. And then you have 2 bolts on each side of this cross member, and your transmission mount, which means before you take this out, you're going to need to put a jack stand under the transfer case to support the back of the drivetrain, and remove this cross member. That will expose the pan. Now, if you notice, you have 21 bolts that go all the way around the pan. The original bolts on the earlier models are 30 Torx. In most cases, you have a steel bolt in an aluminum case, which means they're going to be in there and they're going to be tight. So a 30 Torx, in a lot of cases, you're going to end up reaming out the inside of these bolts. You may end up taking a lot of them out with vice grips. One tip that I usually use that works pretty well is to take a steel straight punch and hit on the head of each bolt before you try to remove it. In other words, just simply set the punch up against the head of the bolt, a couple short raps with a hammer, and in many cases that will break them loose. You may want to upgrade to the new bolts that they have available for these, which has a number 40 Torx in it, which has a little more meat to it, and it makes it a lot easier to retorque them back in place. Once you've done that, up in this upper corner you have the motor mount for the passenger side or right hand side of the vehicle. Best to access it with a large or long 1/2-inch drive extension and an 18mm socket, and you can sneak down between the valve cover and the right inner fender from up top, run it down on top of the nut, zip that off, and then you'll take your jack from back here and you're going to raise the back of the transmission so that the edge side of the engine has lifted, because on the pan you have a pickup tube that's about 10 inches long and is part of the pan. So this pan has to come down a good 10 inches before it'll clear out. But you have to replace the pan because as obviously when we showed you the kit, the filter is part of the pan. Once you've gotten on that, it's just a matter of take your 21 bolts out, drop the pan, wipe out any excessive drips you have, install the new pan. The new pan will have the seal built right into it. Essentially reinstall everything as you took it apart in the same order. The engine will just drop down, your stud should line right up, put your nut back on your motor mount, reinstall your cross member, reinstall your catalytic converter, then your bracket, and then your heat shield. You may find, for you guys that like to do things in the driveway, this may not be the type of job that you want to do. If you don't have the proper equipment, you can't jack the vehicle up safely and be able to support the back of the drivetrain, I would suggest you take this to a shop, let them do it. Okay. Again, it is a recommended service on these. It's good to change the fluid because over a period of time, as the clutches wear, that material builds up into the filter and into the fluid itself. That all reduces the efficiency of the transmission, creates more heat, and heat is the worst enemy for an automatic transmission. Alright, so now that we have the filter changed, the new pan in place, and the bolts, what we need to do now is refill the system. There is a drain plug, which we'll show you in a few minutes, or actually a refill plug on the side, on the right side of the vehicle towards the rear of the pan, and it's in the case area, not in the pan itself. And what we're going to do is remove that plug, and there's a procedure for setting up your fluid level. Now initially you're going to take the plug out, and you're probably going to need to add anywhere from 3 to 5 quarts before it gets to a point where it's filled the pan. Then what we're going to do is put the plug back in. You got to start the vehicle, bring it up to operating temperature, because you want the fluid in the transmission at least 85 degrees Fahrenheit and no higher than 105 degrees. If you have a gauge that you can plug into an analyzer where you can take transmission fluid temperature, that's ideal. Once you get it running, then you're going to put it back up in the air. You're going to take the side plug out with the vehicle running in park, fully warmed up, and you're going to continue to fill through that plug until you get just a light dripping coming out of that fill hole. Now, light dripping means about a drip once a second, and that's ideal. If there's nothing dripping out, you need to add more. If it's pouring out, let it pour out until it reaches that 1 drip a second. So we're going to change position a little bit, and we'll show you where that plug is. Alright, so this is the location of your fill plug. To remove it, you're going to need an 8mm hex driver. Usually find best removing these for the first time, they're going to be pretty tight. So if you have a 3/8 drive ratchet with a long handle and get a 8mm hex drive and 3/8 drive, you should be able to pop that loose, and then from there it'll come right out. And remember, you've just put the pan on, so it's going to be empty, nothing's going to come out. You're going to initially put your 3 to 5 quarts in, and then from there bring it up to operating temperature, take the plug back out while it's running up in the air, and continue filling it until you get the mild drip. And that basically is the full procedure for refilling. Cap it off once it reaches the drip, take it for a ride, make sure it's shifting properly, make sure any air has been worked out of the system, and you should be good to go. So when you're ready to do your transmission service or have it done, just call any of our knowledgeable salesmen at 1-800-533-2210. And thanks for watching.